Hi, so today is a video about all of the eyeshadow palettes I used the most in 2021. I didn't call this video like favorite or something because I like something doesn't mean I use it very much. A lot of palettes I really love, but I only use like once or twice. But these are the palettes that I love a lot and used a lot. I think that's just make more sense to me. So let's begin. Because I work and live in Japan, and in Japan the small palettes like duals, trills, quads or queens are more popular than the big ones, because in Asia we just don't use the big palette that much, because usually people just do very basic looks. So there's a lot of small palettes in this video. Let's just get through them the first. So there's 5 in here. Small palettes I probably use a lot more than big ones because they are just so perfect for the daily basis. Brand CANMAKE. This little trail, it doesn't look like much, but it is so good. Like every shade in here is necessary, and you can achieve a very beautiful look. Just use these 3 shadows. You don't need other shadows. So let me swatch this for you. My favorite shade in here is this shade. This is such a unique shade in my opinion. You might see this and say like that's not unique at all. It's just a mid-tone satin brown, like nothing special about it. But when I put this on my eye, I really feel like this tone is very unique because it has some warmth to it, but it's not pink, it's not orange, it's not red. It's just that subtle warmness on your eye. I feel like it's like more of a warmer taupe, but taupe is normally either silvery or sometimes a little bit green, sometimes a little bit mauve, but this is neither. Like this is none of those. I don't know how to describe. This shade is so elegant, and I never find a taupe that's quite this shade, and also it blends so beautifully. I never experience patchiness with this shade. And this glitter is also so pretty. I have no other words to say. Like, it's very chunky and everything, but it is very beautiful. Like you can see. In Asian kind of aesthetic, when it comes to makeup, we love glitter, we love shimmer, so it's very rare to find some matte shadows. These kind of shimmer glitter things are more common. And here is a darker brown, so you can give a little bit more depth to your eye. So for me, this little trail can do so much. A lot of times if I have a more formal situation or where somewhere to go, I use this a lot. As you can see, I have quite a big dent on this shade, and that is rare for how many palettes I have. I think I have hundreds of palettes, and the fact that I can use it, that it has a dent to it, is so rare. I really love this. I don't remember how much this is, but I don't think it's more than $8. And actually packaging is pretty cute. quite girly, not my type of packaging, but I do think it's cute. The rest of them, I think a lot of people might never heard of the brand. So this one is the brand called, I don't know how to pronounce this in English, CEZANNE. I don't know. In Japanese, we call it CEZANNE, but I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English. This is also such a beautiful trio. It looks like so cheap because it literally is. I feel like this is maybe $6 or $7, so it's actually very affordable. And my favorite shade is the center shade. This is my perfect kind of pinky reddish brown, where it's not too red. Of course, you can see it's pretty much brown, but I just feel like on the eyes it just gives such a perfect amount of redness where it doesn't make your hooded eye look more hooded, because a lot of times reddish undertoned shadows can make your eye look hooded, but this one does not, and it just blends so beautifully. And this center shade, it has the most subtle and beautiful glow to it. It's more of a in between of satin to like shimmer. If you're familiar with Asian eyeshadow formulas, you probably know what kind of finish I'm talking about. It's not like metallic or anything, but it do has a very fine sheen to it, which I really love. And you can see by layering it, it can be pretty pigmented, so it's quite beautiful. And this is a red. This one is more satin. I use this to just add a little bit more depth to the eye. And this highlighting shade is very beautiful as well. It's more similar to the Colourpop like highlight, Super Shock highlight. It's more of that kind of formula. I really like this trio. I use it a lot, but for some reason it doesn't look like it's used that much. I don't know why. Maybe because it's just so like creamy and on the more pigmented side when it comes to like Japanese eyeshadows, so you don't need a lot. I just really like this. It blends so perfectly on my eye. The next is this brand called Excel, and yes, it is the same name as the office software, the Excel. I don't know why they decide to, you know, call the brand like that, but it is Excel. And my favorite is SR06 and SR11, and this is called the Skinny Rich Shadow. I will say this quad is less pigmented than these two. This is more like sheer to medium kind of pigmentation, so if you love more pigmented shadows, these are probably not for you. These are quite sheer. Well, I guess it's swatch okay, but on the eyes they are pretty sheer. What I like about these is because of my olive undertone, most of the mauve eyeshadows don't work on me. I mean Western brand mauve eyeshadows, because most of the time they are very cool toned, muted kind of mauve shade that it just don't melt well with my olive skin tone. But I think because this brand is based in Japan, it's taking the Asian undertone into consideration, so the mauve they did really work on me. It's such a sultry, sexy kind of look, and you can probably tell I have a dent in this shade as well. That is very rare. It just tells you how much I have used in this shade, and for me this is a pretty like cool toned muted mauve shade, but it works on me so nicely. And I have never find such a perfect mauve shadow in the Western brands. Mostly I just stay away from mauve shadows from the Western brands because rarely do they work on me. And this is the SR11. This is more warm, but I still want to say it's on the mauve side. Ooh. It's just there is a peachy shadow that makes you think it's more like warmer, but if you cover it, you can see it's just a mauve quad. And every palette from Excel, I just love the third shade. Basically how I use this palette is I will mostly blend this shade all over my lid, so my look is always based on this shade. And I will blend out the edge with this, and I will deepen the outer corner or like lash line with this shadow, and I will put this on the center a little bit. So yeah, it's very easy. You can't get too many looks just out of this little quad because the shade is so similar in here. Not much of variety, but it's just so easy to use and looks so good on my skin tone. Okay, that's that. And here I think this brand you probably have heard of before is Rimmel. But Rimmel is a weird brand that they do different products in Japan, and the products they release in Japan, they don't release it on other places. Like this Quint, I believe. I don't think you can find this on the Western market, but this is so good, so perfect. And I don't know if you can tell, this shade, I have such a big dent on it. And you can see the other shades, they are all like domed, and this has such deep dent. I think if I just focus on this shade for 2 months, I probably could keep pen on this. That's how much I love it. And this is also a very pretty mauve shade. This shade is very similar to the Tom Ford cream color for eyes, shade Platinum that everybody loves. This shade is very, very similar to that. This is the Platinum. So the shade Platinum is probably a little bit warm or like pink than this shade, but on the eyes they are so similar. The finish, the color, so similar. I don't think you can tell that much of different when once it's on the eye. If you really look at this Quint, you can see how perfect this palette is designed. So these two are different toned, like mid-tone brown that you can use all over your lid. And this shade is more of a champagne, like shimmery highlight. So you can maybe like light your inner corner or use on your like center of your lid. Or you can also like even mix with other shades. And here is a satin matte deep brown so that you can deepen your outer crease or your lash line, and there is a glitter so you can adjust your look to be like more of a more glam look or not. And there's no shade that I can use or I don't like. For me, this is how you do a small palette. Every shade is functional and there's no repetitive shade, because I see a lot of times the small palette still can have a lot of like repetitive shade that you probably can place it with another like different finish or color. But this one I want to say is perfect. And I haven't said the name of this. It's the CHOCOLA Sweet Eyes in the shade 002. Maybe one day I will put this in the project pan and actually make a pen in this shade because it is really near the pen. That's all of my small palettes there. And let me talk about the big palettes. Actually, these big palettes, a lot of them are like older palettes. Even though there's a lot of releases in the year, I don't find me using them that much. I don't know why. I just feel like there's a lot of fun palettes, but most of the time I just use it like once or twice and put them back into my collection and never use them. But these are the palettes that I use again and again and again in the year. So the first, I'm not sure if this is discontinued or what, it's the Natasha Denona Gold palette. This palette is, for me, is so pretty. Like every shade I can use and every shade I love, especially this two. I reach for this two shadow a lot, and every time I use it I feel like I just have such a good day, of good eyeshadow day. And other shades I love them as well, I just don't reach for them like as much as this two. I really find these two very special and easy to use at the same time. Like this Taupe metallic sort of shade is like more of a green, and you can find this color on other brands as well, but I find this formula is the easiest to use because there's no very chunky glitter in it. I think there's a shade in the CANMAKE palette that's very similar to this. I think it's Mothership 5, the one that everybody loves. I love that shade as well, but because that is more of a glittery shade and it's more strong, I find myself reach for this color a lot more because it is more of a like a shimmer metallic kind of shade, so it's actually easier to use. And the other shades, like I have just no complaint about this palette. Every shade I think it's necessary. It makes sense why they put like every single shade in here. And I am so afraid of they really discontinue this palette, because in my opinion this is one of the best palette Natasha Denona have ever done in her line. Yeah, I just love it so much. And the next is also a Natasha Denona palette, and this is more old. This is actually the first launch of her. This is the brown green palette, I believe. And I use this palette so much. Like, I actually really like to keep my makeup very clean, so I clean them once in a while. But this one, don't know if you can tell, it's very dirty. Like all of these like inner parts, I cannot even clean them because they won't return to where it's new. It's just stained by the eyeshadow. And I even have some dents like in this very chunky glitter shade. I love it. Like every single shade, I don't have one shade that I don't like in this palette, which is so rare for a palette that's so big. I feel like when a palette is more than 5 colors, I probably have at least one eyeshadow I don't use or I don't like. But there's no shadow that I don't like in this palette. I use some shades more than others. That's just because, you know, these browns are more easy to use. But I equally love every shade, even the like very green shades. And you would think this is a very green palette because they put the green shades in the center, but when you really look at it, it's only this 5 that is very green. The other ones are all very neutral, even this one. It looks like it's very like blue-green, but it's actually not. It's more like grayish kind of green. It's all very easy to use. I use this in various situations, like when I have a job interview, or when I have some like important place to go, or I just want to play with colors, or even sometimes I don't know, the formula is so good I just want to reach for it. And because I love this one so much, I actually purchased the other one, like the purple blue one, not long ago because it was on sale, like 20 or 30% off on Selfridges. So I picked it up and I love that one as well. It's just because I have that one for like not even more than a month, so I'm not including it. But that one was very good as well. Next would be CANMAKE. This one I have spoken about in my yearly favorites. It's just so perfect for everyday use or when you want to play with colors. The formula of every single shade is so good. Like this bronze is so creamy. It feels like, almost feels like a cream. And it just adheres so nicely to your eyelid. Like this purple is so pretty and kind of unique at the same time. And also these other shades are pretty as well. These mattes blend so beautifully. I have no other words to say other than, for me, this is the most easy to use palette in her line. Even everybody, I feel like this palette was ignored by many people in the, at least on YouTube. I won't say never, I rarely see people talk about this, but in my opinion, this is one of the best in her line. And another one is also a very old one from CANMAKE. This is her first launch, and in my opinion, her first launch is her best launch when it comes to her eyeshadow palettes, because I feel like recent several palettes since from the Divine Rose, they're so similar, and I feel like the formula is still very, innovative. It's their special formula, the Bliss Astrals, but actually shades, you can find those shades in a lot of other brands. But the first launch, the first 3 palettes, in my opinion, is the best. It's unique and it's easy to use. For example, this palette, I don't remember this is the second or the third. At the first glance, you probably feel like this is such a random palette. The shades are like a little bit weird, but when you really look at it, you can find that there's not single one shade that don't go with other shades in this palette. Like you can see this blue is quite standing out, and you can see every shade in this palette goes with this blue. Like all of these and all of these, you couldn't even find one that don't go with this. And this purple is quite like standing out in this palette as well, but you can see every shade go with it. And it's just so perfect. It's such a perfect palette when you want to play with colors, but you also don't have that much of skill like somebody like me. For me, this is just so beautiful, and I find her recent quads is kind of copying the first launch. Like this shade, I feel like they just done 1 or 2 quad that including the shade like just look like this. And this very yellowy gold was so repetitive in her recent launches. So for me, I just want this brand to go back to this kind of palette rather than her like Divine Rose or the Utopian palette. I love this kind of like more creative, more unique palettes a lot more. I reach for the first launch way more than her recent launch. That's my own opinion. I love it so much. So the last one is also one I mentioned in my yearly favorite. It's a Mood Colourpop palette. I think this is their fall launch, so this is more of a like fall kind of color story, and this is what I am wearing today. I really like the look I have done with this. I also used the taupe palette, also from Colourpop, but the green colors are from this palette. It's mainly these two shades. This palette, I think the quality, the color selection, the layout, the whole theme of this palette is better than every single one of their big palettes. Like these kind of shades is actually quite hard to make. They blend so perfectly on my eye. You can see there's no patchiness on my eye. And this kind of green, like matte green, is so difficult to make it completely smooth and easy to blend, but this palette does. Every single shade, I feel like they have a purpose, and there's no repetitive shade in here, which is kind of rare even in Colourpop's own line, like her Bare Necessity or like Stone Cold Fox or something like that. Those palettes are beautiful, but I want to say there's some repetitive shades in there that you can totally replace with other shades. Or sometimes I even feel like their big palettes just serves the same kind of function as their 9-pan like small palettes. But this palette is not. You can do so many looks. Every single row has a different color story, and they are so different than each other, but you can still like mix them like together, and they work together super nicely. I have nothing bad to say about this palette. It's just so perfect in my opinion. So yeah, that's all the palettes I used the most in the past year. I still love all of them and use them all the times. Thank you for watching. Bye.